So far we've got 12 Paragons, 5 primary, 3 military, 2 magic and 2 support, which leaves 13 Paragons to go. In the primary category we're still expecting the Glue and Desperado, in military the Sniper, Heli, Mortar and Dartling, magic, super, Alch, Druid and Mermonkey, and finally in the support category the Farm, Village and Beast Handler. In this video I want to do a bit of speculation and talk about the upcoming Paragons and what they might look like, what mechanics they might have, and how useful I think they're going to be. And I'm gonna go from top to bottom, starting with the Glue Gunner. The top path is for lots of damage over time, middle path is a global debuff, and the bottom path is for slows and stuns. What could this Paragon be like? Obviously we have the debuff ability, and how much it actually debuffs we will probably get an idea of once the Ice Paragon is nerfed. Right now it is extremely strong, and what the bonus damage ends up being in the end is still to be seen. Before the Ice Paragon came out, I theorized that maybe the bonus damage will be different for normal towers versus Paragons. That way they can have a bonus damage of maybe 6 for normal towers and something higher for Paragons, so that they also can get a good benefit from a debuff that comes from another Paragon, since normal debuffs don't help Paragons very much since they already have a lot of damage, and that way we can create more Paragon synergies. But that didn't end up being the case for the Ice Paragon, although given how OP the tower is at the moment, major reworks are still in place, so I wouldn't count out the idea just yet. But what about the other non-debuff paths of the Glue Gunner? The top path for damage could be very simple, just tons of damage over time, which would potentially synergize very well with the bottom path Mermonkey or Mermonkey Paragon. But what about the bottom path, the stuns and the slows? Given that the newly released Bomb Paragon attacks so slowly, it's not that amazing at stopping tons of fast Moabs and bloons, but the Glue Paragon could be the best Paragon at this job so far. But all of this still sounds very basic, and Ninja Kiwi likes to add more abilities to make the Paragons more than just a set and forget tower, so I would not be surprised if we got a second ability on top of the global debuff one, so what would that one be like? It could be something like it charges up an extra strong blob of glue that hits one target and does a lot more damage than the regular attack, and leaves a puddle on the ground as well that does some pretty strong damage, pretty similar to the Submarine's nuke ability, but it's glue instead of a nuke and only hits a target in its range. And who knows, if we see the Ice Paragon being able to slow bads with its ability, then maybe this ability can do the same, but instead of slowing every bad on the screen for a short period of time, it only slows down one bad for a longer period of time. And regarding the global debuff ability, where it just rains glue all over the screen, obviously there's going to be something more to it than that. It's probably going to have quite a bit of damage as well, sort of like when you cross path it with the top path, and that gives you a little bit of damage on the glue rain. The glue rain for the Paragon is probably going to have some decent damage as well. I kind of like my idea of charging up a super strong blob of glue that hits one target and then leaves a blob on the ground that does some pretty good damage as well, and just does tons of damage super quickly. That could be something that synergizes with a couple of other towers and could be pretty fun. This Paragon overall in terms of damage is probably going to be pretty mid-tier unless you synergize it with some other stuff, but it will provide a lot of support, and I expect it to come at a medium price point. Now let's talk about the Desperado Paragon. The top path is fast attacking revolvers, the middle path is a strong rifle with lots of range and infinite pierce, and the bottom path is the shotgun that can knock back mob class balloons, and the shrapnel can explode and catch fire. The first question that comes to mind is, what weapon will the Paragon have? The top path only has the revolvers, but the bottom two paths has the main weapon plus a revolver. The rifle uses the revolver when the targets are too close to use the rifle, and the shotgun uses the revolver if the target is too far away to use the shotgun. So will the Paragon have all three weapons, or two, or just one? There are several ways to go about it, and I can't say I know what to expect, so let's just talk about abilities instead. The tier 5 has two abilities. The first one is Take Aim, which gives the selected monkey more range, accuracy and camo detection, and the second ability is Marked to Pop, which marks bloons to take extra damage and give extra cash, and then all Desperados attacks them. Here I was struggling to make these abilities fun and exciting for the Paragon. I guess the first ability could just, give extra range and accuracy to other Paragons, just make the ability work for Paragons. guess that could be useful in some scenarios. I couldn't think of much for the Mark to Pop ability either, other than make it the same thing but for Paragons, so it marks a target that causes other Paragons to focus on that target and does extra damage. That could actually be pretty useful in quite a few scenarios. This Paragon I am not as excited about compared to most others. The cost and strength of this Paragon kind of all depends on the damage of the rifle, if that's going to be crazy strong or not, which would make it potentially very useful against a boss like Vortex, but I would guess that this Paragon ends up being a medium strength Paragon. Next we got the Sniper Paragon. The top path shoots very strong shots that can stun mob class balloons and gives the strongest debuff in the game of +5 damage. The middle path has bouncing bullets and shrapnel and has an ability that drops cash crates, and it also buffs the attack speed of all snipers. The bottom path shoots extremely fast, and the speed increases the further the balloons has traversed on the track, and once they leak, the sniper goes supersonic for 7 seconds. This one is pretty interesting because of a lot of things. Like, are we gonna have everything in one sniper? High damage, insane attack speed, shrapnel, bouncing bullets, and a debuff? That would be nuts. To balance this, maybe they will make the high damage debuff shot only be like once every 50 shots or something, since it shoots so incredibly fast. That could be a pretty straightforward way to include all the paths without making it too insane. As for the passive ability that gives you extra attack speed once you leak, maybe then not only do you get extra attack speed, but also every shot becomes the high damage debuff shots. That would be hilarious and would honestly be awesome. I'm voting for that. And the ability that drops cash, I don't know what could be made more interesting here. Obviously make it give a lot more cash, but that's not very interesting, so let me know if you have any cool ideas here. And maybe the Paragon buffs the attack speed of all snipers, similar to how the tier 5 middle path does, or even all military towers, similar to how the Boomerang Paragon buffs all primary towers attack speed. This Paragon is probably gonna be pretty simple and straightforward, but still very fun to use and very useful. The tier 5 towers are not very expensive, so you wouldn't expect the Paragon to be too expensive, but I actually think we're gonna be a little bit surprised there. I would not expect a cheap Paragon price. I think it will land as a medium or even surprise to the high end and land as a high-medium cost Paragon. Next we have the Heli Paragon, another global range tower. Here the top path is again the one with the most damage. It shoots missiles, lasers, plasma, and has razor rotors. The middle path can Chinook towers and also door gunner towers that are tier 4 or lower, and it also has an ability that drops a crate with cash and lives, and another ability that drops down a temporary marine tower. The bottom path can shove back mob class balloons and spawns in 3 mini helis to help out the main one, resulting in a lot of darts fired from the squad of helis. So let's start with the Chinook ability. Here I think we're all wondering the same thing. Will we be able to move Paragons or not? We probably won't be able to door gunner them, but Chinooking them would be cool. And maybe we will be able to door gunner tier 5 towers. Obviously not the really big ones like temples, etc. There are a few exceptions, but door gunning tier 5 towers is a possibility. As for the supply drop ability, here I'm thinking the same thing as the sniper cash drop. I'm not really sure what we can do with this other than make it give more of the same. The marine ability, I'm not sure what to expect from either, like just make it stronger, I guess. I don't know what could be changed here. Maybe do something like he plants a bomb, so once he disappears there's a 3-second countdown until it explodes or something. As for the tower's regular attacks, I'm guessing it's just gonna be a ton of different strong attacks from the main heli, and then the mini helis might work the same way it does for the tier 4 bottom path, where they aren't there all the time like it is for tier 5, but instead it spawns them in the further the bloons get. Or alternatively, there could be an ability that spawns in more of them, but the problem with that is that the Paragon would already have 4 abilities, so this would make 5 abilities for one Paragon, which would be kind of crazy, but could happen. This Paragon does have global range, the upgrades are decently expensive, the Paragon would have some pretty decent utility as well, so this might be on the more expensive side. Of course it depends a lot on how much damage it will do, but I don't think it's going to do nearly as much damage as the Ace, so I think this Paragon is going to end on the high end of of medium cost. And now we got the Mortar. Top path is slow attacks but very big booms. Middle path is a lot of small booms and has an ability that rains explosions over the whole screen that damages and stuns them. And the bottom path gives a damage over time burn effect and leaves fire on the ground and removes fortified properties and camo properties from DDTs and BFBs and below. This one I am not excited about at all, because I mean, what is this Paragon gonna do? Defortify said OMGs? That's completely useless. Is it gonna do tons of damage? I don't know. I mean, none of the towers do a lot of damage, and that has my hopes down for how strong this Paragon will be. And I mean, you also have to micro this tower a lot if you want to maximize the damage from it, so I feel like the damage has to be a lot to make up for that, and I don't feel like we're gonna get that, so it's probably gonna end up being very cheap instead. Or, I mean, there is also a possibility that we get a completely new targeting option, so instead of setting the target, you just set it to strong or first or whatever, and you don't have to micro at all. That is also a possibility. The tier 5 ability is useless in both bossing and free play, which is the only place where you're gonna get Paragons, so there isn't really anything interesting on the ability front either, so with this Paragon I'm really struggling to find anything to be excited about. The only thing I could think of would be a new ability that sends out a giant Mortar that would do a decent chunk of damage in one attack, so it would be useful for bossing and have the ability to defortify bad bloons for free play. To balance that for free play, you would have to make the radius that it defortifies in relatively small compared to the radius it does damage in, so that even with a medium length cooldown you can't defortify too many bats. So there is a chance that this Paragon ends up having some cool unique features that makes it useful, but I'm still expecting it to be on the lower end of medium cost or even low cost if we don't get those unique features. And now let's talk about the Paragon that will completely break the game and probably be the most expensive Paragon so far, the Dartling Paragon. This one is gonna be insane. The top path has crazy amounts of pierce and does good amounts of damage to take out tons of regular and Moab class balloons very fast. The middle path does some of the best Moab class damage in the entire game, shooting missiles from both of its arms with extremely high damage, and it has an ability that shoots tons of missiles, and the amount of missiles that it fires during the time the ability is active is affected by buffs. And finally, the bottom path, which gives you a faster swivel and now shoots buckshots, and gives you a new targeting option that gives the 4 barrels automatic targeting that targets first, last, close and strong, and the top 2 barrels are higher up than the rest and can see over some obstacles. These towers have global range, can see camo, can be microed easily for extra damage, does insanely well against both regular bloons and Moab class, both for single target and multi-target, and can do quick burst damage with the MAD ability. That's why these towers are frequently used both in free play and bossing, both for timed events and least tiers. All of these towers are very expensive and very strong, so the expectation here is that the Paragon will be as well. This Paragon is definitely gonna be in the very expensive category and will almost certainly rival the Ace Paragon. But how will the Paragon work? It could have all 3 attacks at the same time, having 3 platforms, similar to how the bottom path has 4 platforms of buckshots. Or maybe it will only have 1 weapon at a time, but you can switch between them. If they go the way of only having 1 weapon at a time, that could be a way to balance the tower to not make it completely overpowered against every type of bloon 100% of the time, and then they could also do something else that I think would be very interesting. Instead of having just a regular MAD ability, what if the ability depends on what weapon you have selected? So if you have the anti-Moab missile selected, you get a rocket storm stronger than anything you've ever seen versus Moabs before, and if you use the ability with the ray selected, you get infinite pierce and tons more damage, and that would be awesome against something like Vortex, and maybe it also fires smaller rays in all directions to take care of any smaller bloons while you focus on the main target, and if you use the ability with buckshot selected, it fires fires so many buckshots that your game crashes, your PC melts, and is unusable forever. That, I think, would be a pretty cool and fun idea to make the tower more interactive instead of just having all weapons active all of the time. And in fact, you could have a second ability that does just that. It activates all weapons for a short period of time, and that would be awesome, so we can get to see that craziness as well. You know what? I'm very happy with my suggestion here. I think all of that would be freaking amazing. This Paragon is gonna be super hype, super expensive, and super strong, and I can't wait to see it. And speaking of super strong, now we're moving over to magic, starting with the Super Monkey. Now, the VTSG is sort of a semi-paragon. It is an upgrade that comes after tier 5 and requires one of every tier 5 to make, so some people don't even think that we're gonna get a paragon for the Super Monkey. I was very curious about this, so I decided to ask Ninja Kiwi about it, and they pretty much gave the answer I expected, which was that right now the VTSG is sort of the de facto paragon of the Super Monkey, even though there are differences between it and a normal paragon. But creating a normal paragon for the tower is something that they have discussed on and off over the years. So basically the answer is that it could happen, but there are no plans on it, as the VTSG is the de facto paragon for the Super Monkey at the moment. The problem with this paragon, if we were to get one, is how strong would it be? I mean, think of how strong the True Sun God, Anti-Bloon, and Legend of the Night is. They are crazy. They do insane amounts of damage, huge range, seize camo, good versus bloons and Moabs. It's basically the same situation as the Dartling Gunner, but even crazier. Like, do you make the Paragon stronger than the VTSG? I mean, you kind of have to, right? Except I guess the Paragon does have bonus boss damage to take into account, but at least you'd have to make it somewhat similar, but with some niche strengths. Because you've got to sacrifice a True Sun God, and the cost of that tower alone is more expensive than most Paragons, even without giving any sacrifices to it. And then you have the cost of the Anti-Bloon, Legend of the Night, tier sacrifices, cash injection. It's going to be an expensive Paragon. It would have to be insanely strong due to the insane cost of the sacrifices. No matter what price they set for the Paragon upgrade itself, it's gonna be super expensive. As for what the Paragon would do, it's probably gonna be some absolutely insane stuff, like an anti-bloon ability that insta-deletes everything off the map, even like bad bloons, no matter how much HP they have, teleports outside of the game with a black hole, finishes your homework. Like, there is no limits for what this thing could do. And obviously there is a lot of potential for sort of Easter eggs and side upgrades here, like a dark version of the Paragon similar to the VTSG, or like a new Adora transformation. There is a lot of cool things that this Paragon has potential to do. And of course, the sacrifices that you give to the True Sun God that you then sacrifice to the Paragon could potentially play a role in how strong the Paragon is, like what attacks it has from the sacrifices that you gave to the True Sun God. And of course you sacrifice support, so you know the Paragon does have potential to buff other towers, maybe even other Paragons, and that would be extremely powerful. And I feel like due to how crazy this thing kind of has to be, I feel like that's another reason to wait with this Paragon quite a while and have it be one of the last ones released. The problem with this Paragon is of course making it balanced due to how much it will cost, and it kind of has to be very strong because of that, but if you go too crazy it's gonna take away too much from all the other Paragons. So I think Ninja Kiwi are gonna struggle with the design on this one, and probably the visual design too. I mean, what would the Paragon look like? How do you merge the design of the three paths in a nice way, and how do you make it look legendary? I mean, the VTSG, it kind of has to overshadow the VTSG a little bit, or at least be on the same level, because, you know, the expectation of this Paragon is so big, and the VTSG already looks so amazing and legendary, so how do you make the Paragon sort of overshadow that? This Paragon has a lot of question marks around it. It's hard to speculate, and we're not gonna get it for a long time, if ever, so I think I'm just gonna stop there and be happily surprised whenever it comes out. Next is the Alchemist. So the top path buffs other towers with a permabrew that gives more range, pierce, attack speed, and damage. The middle path turns the Alchemist into a laser shooting monster that also throws unstable concoctions onto mob class balloons that causes an explosion when they pop, and it also has an ability that turns 5 monkeys into monsters as well. The bottom path turns lead bloons into cash and golds other bloons so that they give extra income when popped, and the final upgrade has a shrink potion that turns anything smaller than a bat into a red bloon. Now, what on earth is this Paragon gonna do? What is gonna happen with the Alch buff? Is it gonna affect Paragons? Is it gonna work on normal towers and give a different or stronger effect? Everything is possible. What about the transformation ability? Is it gonna transform regular towers into new kinds of monsters that are stronger? Perhaps. Is it gonna be able to perform some kind of transformation on other Paragons? Probably not. I would expect this Paragon to be pretty weak when not transformed, acting mostly as support, and then gain some decent damage when it's transformed. But what about the bottom path? Is it gonna gold things for tons of extra cash? Is it gonna have the shrink potion, and how is it gonna be different? Because the only way to make the shrink potion different would be if it works on bad balloons, and if that's gonna be the case, it has to be an ability to prevent it from being too strong. This Paragon could work in a couple of different ways, but I think I would expect the damage to be pretty bad, but for it to make up for it with utility like being able to buff other towers, and it's probably gonna be pretty good for sub-bad cleanup, assuming the shrink potion gets incorporated somehow. But I guess there is a chance that it might be more powerful than expected if a certain thing with the unstable concoction happens. There used to be a common misconception that the damage the explosion deals is a percentage of the HP of the Moab that the potion is applied to, but in reality it's just a set amount of damage that quickly becomes insignificant at higher rounds. But if the Paragon potion actually does a percentage-based damage, that would be insane. So in terms of how strong this Paragon is gonna be, how much it's gonna cost, how excited I am about it, I really don't know how to put my finger on it because there are so many question marks here. I don't know what they're gonna go for, so I really don't know what to expect here. Next we got the Druid, and this I think is one of the most anticipated ones by sort of the larger community if you look into any Reddit thread. I don't know why this one gets people so excited. I think it might stem back to some old 2D video of some fan-made Druid Paragon that was insanely powerful, I'm not sure. The top path has a lot of different attacks, including Thorns, Lightning, Ball Lightning, and the Super Tornadoes that blows back everything smaller than a bat, and since recently it actually does some decent damage as well, but most of its power comes from the blowback. The middle path is the Spirit that spawns thorned vines along the track that does constant damage to balloons, and the Spirit can also call a vine from the ground to come up and entangle and crush regular balloons. The bottom path is the Avatar of Wrath, which does more damage the more balloons there are on screen, and it also gains attack speed from lives lost and if it attacks continuously without taking a break, and stacking multiple tier 4 towers next to it also gives an attack speed buff. For the vines that the Druid spawns from the ground that can grab regular balloons, I think we can guess that they're probably gonna be able to grab some bigger stuff as well, maybe even all the way up to ZOMGs, similar to the Boat Paragon, or it could stop at BFBs or Moabs. The vines along the track, I'm not sure what they're gonna do with them, because the Spike Paragon basically has sort of what you would expect a Druid Paragon to have, which is a basic constant damage, so how is the Druid going to differentiate itself from that? Well, the Druid does have different types of vines depending on how close it is to the tower, so that's different, but other than that I'm not sure what they could do. I mean, there is the Vine Explosion ability, of course, that's different as well, and maybe they could make the vines poisonous, so they apply a debuff depending on what type of vine the balloon hits, but the Druid doesn't have any debuff, so maybe not. As for the tornadoes, they are already crazy good. They have a lot of pierce, they blow back Moabs all the way up to ZOMGs, and it blows them back a lot, and if you add a bunch of buffs to this tower, it stalls pretty much everything. So the regular tornadoes can't really be made any stronger other than more damage, of course, so the attack will probably be pretty similar. Most of the damage is of course going to come from the bottom path, and here I expect some interesting self-buffing mechanics similar to the NG Paragon. The NG Paragon buffs itself for every round that passes up to a certain limit, and I expect that the Druid Paragon might have something like that, not only getting stronger by the RBE on screen, but also getting stronger the longer it has been on the map. Or of course it could be something similar to the tier 3 Druid that gets stronger the more damage it does without taking a break from attacking. Either way, what I want to see here is a long curve, so that if you have the Paragon attacking for a long time, or if you get the Paragon early and keep it for many rounds, it keeps getting stronger and stronger for a long time, much longer than the NG Paragon, and with a very high ceiling, so that you benefit a lot from this effect, and it becomes crucial to get the Paragon early or keep it attacking constantly in order to get a lot of damage from this Paragon. And I think if you're careful with how you set up the math for how this Paragon gets stronger, you could get away with not having a ceiling whatsoever, so the Paragon gets stronger and stronger for every round forever, making it technically infinitely strong. For this to be balanced, you would have to make it so that it grows in strength pretty quickly in the beginning, so it has time to become strong in time for tier 4 and tier 5 bosses, but then make the growth slow down so it doesn't become way too powerful for free play. That would be really cool, to have a Paragon that technically has no limit and becomes more useful the longer you can keep it with no limits. That would be something very original. So this could end up being a pretty strong Paragon. Even if they don't do this, I expect it to be in the upper end of medium cost, and if they do end up doing something like this, it could be on the expensive side, so it could be quite strong, and I am also pretty excited to see the Druid Paragon. Then we have the Mermonkey. The top path is straight out of the hentai category and smacks bloons with its tentacles and slows them down with its ink. It also creates a puddle of ink around it so you can place water towers, and it gives a pierce buff to nearby towers. The middle path throws tridents that increase in size and damage as they travel and then freeze bloons on impact, and it also has an ability that freezes bloons globally and shoots out tons of ice balls that bounce around the map to freeze and damage more bloons. The bottom path can hypnotize bloons up to ZOMGs to circle around its totem and thus stalling the tower, and it also detonates any damage over time effect on that bloon up to 10k damage so that a new one can be applied to it right away. The tower also buffs nearby heroes by 15% less ability cooldowns and 15% more range, and magic monkeys gets extra pierce. So what could this Paragon do? Potentially a larger puddle of ink around the tower to be able to place more water towers, maybe some kind of new interesting buff to those towers similar to the pierce buff of the top path. Another thing would be a larger damage over time detonation limit, which would synergize very well with some other Paragons and towers, and this I think for sure is going to be a thing. The harmonic may also have some new effects, like some bloons getting confused and going backwards on the track for a while after getting hypnotized. In terms of damage, we might see the regular attacks being tentacles at close range, doing some pretty hard hits, and then some lower damage tridents at longer ranges. The middle path does have quite a lot of range, so that the tridents have time to grow stronger when targets are far away, and it might be cool if the Paragon has even more range, so that placement becomes something you really think about, where you have to weigh how much you want the tridents to grow in size versus the damage you get on the hard-hitting tentacles. The ability with the ice balls is probably gonna be something similar to what we have on tier 5, and there is a possibility for some new ability here to have something to do with the tentacles. Maybe they get extra damage or crazy range for a short period of time, or maybe just hooks in some nearby mob class balloons similar to like a sea monster kraken or something. I think this Paragon is gonna be fairly cheap, landing on the lower end of medium cost. I don't think it's gonna be too strong, and its utility is mainly gonna be to be paired with damage over time towers, so I think it's gonna be a more niche Paragon. It's gonna be fun to play around with for certain things, but overall I don't think it's gonna be that strong, and I'm not super excited about it. And now we're moving on to support, starting with the farm. This Paragon I think is gonna make money. Well, that's about it. The top path gives the most amount of money and it gives it in forms of crates. The middle path is a bank where you can invest to earn interest, and at tier 4 you can take out loans, and at tier 5 the ability just turns into generating a free 10k. The bottom path has extra sellback value and generates cash without you needing to pick up any crates, and also has a 5k end of round cash bonus, and on top of that it also picks up any objects in its range. So of course this Paragon is going to make a lot of cash, but I would bet that NK is going to attempt to make this tower a bit more fun and original rather than just some kind of mega banana central. So to try and predict how it will work, I'm going to have to think outside of the box a little bit. First of all, I think it is a small possibility that maybe the extra sellback would affect other towers, similar to the favored trades. Right now the boat Paragon also has that effect, but it doesn't work on Paragons, only regular towers. Secondly, I think items like traps and bananas that are auto-collected by the Paragon might also give bonus cash, so that the placement of the Paragon and how many farms you can fit around it actually matters. Thirdly, the income from the Paragon could be something that scales with the amount of farms on the map, or the amount of farms in its range, or how many rounds the Paragon has been on the map. None of the farms has any attacks, but that doesn't mean that the Paragon won't, so maybe it has an attack with an extremely small range that insta-kills one bloon at a time very slowly by hooking it into the machine and converting it to a big amount of cash, essentially incentivizing the player to place the Paragon near the track in order to maximize its cash generation. There could also be a massive loan ability where you can take out a huge loan, but you gotta pay it back fast, or else the bank will repossess your house in real life. That could be fun. There is almost an endless amount of ideas that I could think of here, so trying to predict what NK will do is impossible, but I would bet that they're gonna make it so that something matters. It might be some ability to make it interactive, it might be the placement, but something is going to be more interactive than just, place it wherever and it's going to make a lot of cash. This Paragon is of course going to be on the more expensive side of things, but it's very difficult to predict how expensive because we don't know how much cash it's going to generate, and it would require a lot of balance testing, but it can't be too cheap because then it would be too powerful and give you too much cash too early. This Paragon I am pretty excited for, because it's going to be very useful in a lot of limited area type challenges, which I like to do, but NK also have to be careful to not make it too strong, because that would ruin those types of challenges, making them way too easy. Next up is the village. The top path buffs the attack speed for all towers, as well as range, pierce and cooldowns for primary towers, and on tier 5 it gains an attack. The middle path gives you camo, anti-regrow, MIB, and an ability for more attack speed. The bottom path gives discounts, more cash per pop, and cash generation for towers in radius, and a free Dartmonkey every round, and tier 5 can absorb farms. For this one, I think there's a chance that the attack the village Paragon does won't be similar to the tier 5 top path at all. I think there's a chance that they might make the attack a tribute to BTD5 and make it into a laser or whatever it used to be back then. It was pretty cool. And then, maybe as it's attacking, it charges up mana for every pop, and then the more mana you have, the more attack speed you will get when you use the Paragon's homeland ability. That would be pretty cool. So there would be like a base of 50% extra attack speed, like the call to arms, and then the more mana you have, the more attack speed the ability will give, and it maxes out at maybe 150 or 200 or something. For regular towers, the ability would affect the whole screen, just like the regular tier 4 and tier 5, but for Paragons it would only work for the Paragons inside of the village's range, and on top of that, even though it only affects Paragons inside of its range, it would probably still be extremely powerful, so maybe for Paragons the effect would be like 1/2 or 1/4 of the bonus attack speed compared to normal towers. And we also have the regular drums too, so if there's gonna be some type of, permanent constant effect as well that affects Paragons, then yeah, making the homeland less effective makes even more sense. And I guess you could also balance it with making the cooldown very long. The MIB should work on Paragons, giving them camo for the few Paragons that doesn't have camo, and the regular MIB to make it pop every type of bloon is useless in most cases, but there is some where it would have an effect, for example purple popping power to the green sentry of the NG Paragon, and there could be more examples like this with future Paragons, so I guess the MIB should be a thing. And given that the top path buffs cooldowns and range and pierce for primary towers, will we see something like this for the Village Paragon too? Some buffs that only works for primary towers or primary Paragons? Could be. And as for the bottom path, extra income in its range and the ability to sacrifice farms to it. So maybe there's a button you can press that absorbs all the farms in its range, and you can press the button as many times as you like, but there is a maximum amount of farms that it can absorb, so eventually pressing the button won't do anything anymore. So there would be a counter of how many farms it has absorbed so far and what the maximum is, and the max would be dependent on the degree of the Paragon. This Paragon is probably also going to be fairly expensive, either on the upper end of medium or lower end of expensive, depending on how strong the buffs are. And yeah, that's about it. And lastly, we have the Beast Handler. The top path is the Big Fish, very strong single target damage, plus some pretty good thrashing damage and knockback to nearby targets. The middle path is the Dino, which has a lot of pierce and some decent damage too. And the bottom path is the Bird that pulls bloons up to ZOMGs to a set point. This could be a very strong one too. Here we could go the way of having 3 different Paragon versions of each beast into one tower, or have the 3 beasts merge into one, sort of like that kaiju movie, you know? And here I think the situation is kind of similar to the Dartling, where I would recommend to have 3 separate beasts and then you can merge them into one using an ability, and that way you can get the best of both worlds. And then you could also have a ton of other abilities if you want on top of that, like one ability for each beast and then a 4th ability that merges them temporarily. Either way you go about it, I think this Paragon is gonna be quite strong, because the Megalodon can literally eat a round 200 fortified bat in one bite, and the Dino cleans up everything and the Bird stalls. I mean, yeah, this is gonna be a pretty good one. The cost of this one is for sure gonna be on the expensive side, and I am pretty excited about this one, not only because it's gonna be very strong, but I'm also very interested in what art style the Paragon is gonna be in. And if the beast can merge into one, I wanna see an abomination. So this video ended up being a lot longer than I expected, despite me trying to keep it as short as possible. But that's just some of my thoughts on future Paragons. I could go on for days about them. Let me know your ideas for future Paragon mechanics and art directions in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.